Nothing but a hound dog, you're crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time.
Time once again. It's Wednesday morning for Ask the Doc with our good friend Dr. Merriweather from All Creatures Veterinary Center. That is where she works, a 24/7 veterinary clinic. So for any type of emergency needs or your pet care, especially after hours, Dr. Merriweather is there to take care of your little furry friends or feathered friends or slithery type friends as well. And what I mean by that are your snakes, not your weird friends who are mooching money off you all the time. Dr. Merriweather, also don't forget Canyon Country Veterinary Hospital, which is on Soledad Canyon next to the Regal Cinema. Not a 24/7 operation, but still on equal par with service and care for those of you on this side of town during what would be considered normal business hours, I suppose. Dr. Merriweather, welcome back. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So we've been doing some questions here. First of all, I was talking off the air, and I want to talk really quickly about pet adoptions because what we want to consider. Because my wife, I have 2 beagles. I've had 3 beagles before, and that's the thing is it's kind of like having 3 toddlers in the house. Although I work from home when I get off of the station here, and my wife is home right now, so it's not a horrible time to get another dog. And she posted a picture of a female beagle that's up at the Castaic Animal Shelter that looked like a lot like a male beagle we had some years ago. And so I'm telling her that she has until about 12 noon to convince me not to go get this this wonderful pet. But let's talk a little bit about adoptions really quickly, because what do we need to consider when we're adopting, especially an adult dog, especially if we've never adopted one before?
Well, there's kind of a lot to consider, especially if this is going to be like your first dog or something like that. Not only like lifestyle, like needs, what you're looking to do with the dog. There's definitely kind of a lot of variety out there. So do a little research, especially if, the breed of the dog's known. So a beagle versus a lab, versus a little Jack Russell. We tend to see different traits in a lot of those breeds. And then particularly with the adults, I think one of the most important things is you're kind of getting a ready-made pet, and that there's a lot of stuff that's already set personality-wise. And that's, kind of good and bad. You have an idea of what you're getting yourself into, at least for size. But also keeping in mind that a lot of animals, unless they're being fostered, if they're actually at a shelter or at a humane society, oftentimes, personalities in that environment is going to be different than what you'll get at home. And
right.
So, keeping an open mind a little bit.
Well, that's true. And in some cases, I don't want to use this analogy too loosely or make light of pets, but in some cases, like when you're buying a used car, you're buying possibly someone else's issues, and you don't know the behavior of the dog. Ultimately, what kind of behaviors they have that you don't have any control over, and you just have to be patient of that and be able to render those corrective remedies. Because I know there are situations like that. Sometimes, especially dogs being really nervous, they might have been traumatized by their incarceration, so they may act out, at least at first, until they kind of get used to the situation and the environment, right?
And not only that, but I think a lot of people get adult dogs thinking that there'll be less work, and that's not always true. Like less work than puppies, in which, kind of depending upon the dog you're getting, you might be able to predict that better, but you won't know until the new pets in your house.
That's true. That's true. I mean, they give you the meet and greet time at these places, but even still, it's just enough to make sure that they're not going to bite you or they're not going to freak out.
Or introduce them to any dogs you might already have at home.
Right. And that's
all the related issues.
The trick, because like in my case, 2 male dogs with a female. Now it may not be a problem because we had actually found a stray that we actually returned a couple weeks ago. She was a little female King Charles Spaniel, and they were pretty nice to her. But one of my dogs got a little snarly because she was getting a little too close to my wife. So you might have some of those issues, but I think overall. But I'm still waiting for Mrs. Cummings to convince me otherwise as to why I should not go and pick up this dog. But even still, I mean, I have to think about it. And if not, I'm sure she'll find a good home somewhere else. But
it's a cute little dog.
And the thing is, I know beagles very well, but it's very, very true about the breed, because there are definitely different behavior patterns between beagles and labs, for example.
Oh, for sure.
Definitely. Labs are bigger, but in some cases, like my friend who has a lab puppy, she's already, golden lab, already when she was just like 3 months old, already showing these signs of mellowness and finding her little spots. I mean, she would get excited and still do some things that puppies do, but that was something that, like, my beagle, when he was 3 months old, was just all over the place. You had to constantly watch him, like I said, like a toddler. And this one, so they're definitely different behavioral styles.
There's a lot of variation even within a breed, but there tends to be certain traits that if you talk to people who own multiple of one, beagles are stubborn, for example.
Right.
And so going into it knowing that you might have a more interesting case on your hands when it comes to training.
Yes.
Versus, if it was a golden retriever, which, will bend over backwards and tie itself into a pretzel to make you happy.
That's true. And beagles will, they can already smell what's in your hand if you're trying the treat training. So you have to just, it's no surprise to them what you've got because they've got so strong noses. You just have to get it so that they know that they're not going to get this thing that they already know you have until they actually do the thing. We need to take a quick break. I got a couple questions from fans to answer. This is the Ask the Doc segment with Dr. Merriweather from All Creatures Veterinary Center. 24/7 vet care clinic on Lyons Avenue in the Victorian buildings between Newhall Avenue and Main Street. Awesome place to go. 8:45. Be back with traffic after this.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog.
And we're back on our Ask the Doc segment. I got all excited about the song with our good friend Dr. Merriweather from All Creatures Veterinary Center. You just got off work?
Yep.
So anything exciting happened last night?
Nothing too out of the normal.
Now, I know you probably have to be careful what you say. I don't know if they're like HIPAA violations or
similar
transcended.
types of stuff, yeah.
But, I don't know. I don't want to get too creative on the air lest I invariably...
Nobody ate anything interesting last
okay.
night.
There we go. That's the point. Well, that's good news because, we've talked about that before, and not only with dogs and cats, but also other types of
small
creatures such as rabbits, and they all kind of get into those things that they shouldn't. But I have, actually, it is a cousin of mine who asked this question, fan of the show, all the way from Arizona. And she had a question about her dog. She got a little kind of a Chihuahua mix that is fine at home around other dogs, is fine at home behaviorally, but when they go out for a walk, any other dogs that approach, she just goes absolutely nuts. Do you know of any? I mean, is there any? Is it
like
just
going nuts, like
barking and kind of being very, very aggressive? I should say, yeah.
It's hard, but without seeing exactly what the dog's doing, it's hard to really give particular advice. Definitely if it's like a fear-based type aggression versus a more confident, I'm going to go after everybody type of thing, and you can see issues with, wanting to protect the family, or territorial issues. A lot of these things are instinctual driven sometimes. Generally speaking, depending upon what's causing it, usually we start super basic, and so making sure that there's lots of treat training. And so oftentimes in these cases, we start, it's a program called Nothing in Life is Free.
Okay.
Where you're basically training the dog to focus on you, and so everything that you want the dog to do, it involves a treat, and it's kind of a philosophy of life, and so it's kind of most of the training you're doing is with the people. But one of the things that what you end up doing is giving the dog the skill set it needs to then work on the actual problems, and so that's kind of the hard part about it. Especially with behaviors, there's often a lot of complicated steps that you end up having to go through.
And there's also, it's very difficult for us as owners of dogs when they do that and they get in an agitated state, especially in public, for us not to get agitated as well, because they're also going to react off of our
and a big thing, I think, especially when it comes to the beginning part of when you're working on it, is you want to stop before you get to the point where the dog starts reacting, and so there's a lot of, kind of once you have your basic training stuff down, and you can reliably get the dog to focus on you, then it's a matter of distraction and desensitization. But the biggest thing is you want kind of the entire experience to be positive, and so if you know that at 50 yards, the dog starts reacting, and the reaction might be starts to stiffen in body posture, starts to look a little worried. You want to stop before it gets to that point.
Right.
And so it might be that you're way on the other end of the park where there's no other dogs, but there's a dog park like way on the other end that it can almost kind of see. and if it's happy with that setup, then you start there.
Got it.
And so it's complicated. It's not, unfortunately, it's not straightforward.
And it's tough. They we can't read their minds. They can't read our minds. So it's kind of that situation. But it should always be, any of that training, no matter what kind of animal it is always positive and reminding people, because we can get it, and also even training. And again, whether it's your rabbit, whether it's anything like that, especially the things like potty training and not doing that negative, some people who do the old rub the nose in it and stuff like that. It's a horrible thing that people do, but it's just making sure that they know where to go, and then positive reinforcement. My dog is going to be 12 years old, and when he's outside and he goes and I'm there, good boy, buddy, good boy. I still do that after all these years. All these years, because I'm
pretty sure my dog expects it.
Exactly. Hey, little attention over here. Come on, I'm doing the right thing.
This is our social activity.
And that's anything, even when they're walking good, or when they're just in generally good behavior, because you get
and that's a great point. Like, catching them being good is a huge part of training.
Right, as opposed to just being bad, and that's important. Well, that's good. Dr. Merriweather, always a pleasure to have you on and answering these questions. We're going to get back into some of the exotic pets questions next week. I know some owners out there who I'm trying to see what kind of issues they have with their rabbits and things like that. But I really appreciate it. Again, you can always find Dr. Merriweather usually in the evenings, right? In the after hours at All Creatures Veterinary Center on Lyons Avenue in the Victorian Buildings between Newhall and Main Street. And also, if you're on this side of town, although Dr. Merriweather won't be there, you also have Canyon Country Veterinary Center. Canyon Country Veterinary Hospital, that is on the corner of, or at Soledad Canyon next to Regal Cinema. All right, Dr. Merriweather, always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.